everybody, I'm International Master Lawrence Trent, and welcome to this series on bashing the Sicilian with Bishop b5. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here, and it's a series I'm absolutely thrilled to present because playing Bishop b5 against the Sicilian has been something I've been doing for well over 10 years. It's brought me fantastic results, and what I've really seen with the Bishop b5 Sicilians is it has two main functions. First and foremost, it is in itself a perfectly sound and viable sideline to the mainline Sicilians. And secondly, what you do by playing Bishop b5 early in the Sicilian is you really stop Black from getting the kind of Sicilian he wants. After all, Black plays the Sicilian in order to get his own special variation, a Najdorf or a Sveshnikov or a dragon, whatever it may be. And the Bishop b5 move simply doesn't allow that, be it after, for example, e4, c5, knight f3, and a Najdorf player would here play d6. We give a check here on b5. This is the Moscow variation, or be them a Sveshnikov player, Kalashnikov, whatever it may be, playing two knight c6, and then we play three Bishop b5 here. Again, stopping them from getting their desired Sicilian. And the Bishop b5 Sicilian can be absolutely without doubt called the most important alternative mainline. So in other words, you're not opening the position with d4. And we've seen that because in no less than the World Championship match in 2018, Fabiano Caruana played the Bishop b5 Sicilian in many games against Magnus Carlsen. And in 2017, 2018, 2019, we've seen just a plethora of tournaments feature this major sideline, be it the Moscow variation or against two knight c6. All the top grandmasters in the world are playing it. It's part of their repertoire. And as a result, it should be considered a very serious alternative to entering the main lines. So the way this series is going to be divided is as follows. It's going to be divided into two main parts. The first half of the series is going to deal with the Moscow variation with Bishop b5 check 3. It's a very logical move. You develop a bishop with check. And of course, we're going to be discussing all of the main lines, knight to d7, knight to c6, and bishop to d7. So that's divided into three main parts. And then in the second part of this series, we're going to be looking at knight c6, and then bishop b5, and all of the moves that come after this move. e6, g6, knight f6, and the list goes on. So lots and lots and lots of different lines to look at, lots of theory, and the idea of this series is, yes, of course, to look at the theory in some detail. It is important to know the theory. It is important to know the latest trends, and what you're going to get is the most up-to-date trend. But not only that, we are going to be looking at the specific ideas and patterns in each position. So you're going to get a really good understanding and overview of what the key motifs are in the Rossolimo, in the Moscow variation. What kind of setups should you be looking for? What kind of tactical ideas are there? After all, this is a tactics series as well. How can you implement them in your own games? So in terms of who is this series really designed for, I would actually say that it's designed for everyone. This series could be applicable if you're a club player, 1500 or so, right the way up. I would say there's no limit. In fact, I would say that even grandmasters would find some value in this series, because I am looking at some new theoretical novelties in the latest games, and so I just think that if you're looking for a solid, reliable, interesting repertoire against the Sicilian, I mean, you're basically covered for 99% of Sicilians here, then this is going to be for you. And as I say, a focus will be on both the tactical motifs and on the theoretical side of things as well. And I think without any further ado, we should just get straight into the action, stuck into the main lines, the side lines, and how we should really approach this opening with white. And we're going to start off looking at the actually, we're going to start off looking at the Moscow variation. That is, in this position here, 2d6 and 3 bishop b5. Enjoy, guys. See you on the other side.
Buying individual chess courses to add to your collection can get expensive, and waiting for the course or video you're looking for to go on sale can take weeks or even months. So, what's a chess enthusiast to do? Introducing the iChess Club, an exclusive community of chess enthusiasts that enjoy a wild range of benefits, including a permanent 40% discount on virtually all chess courses on our shop. Yes, 40% on all items anytime. But wait, there's more. For those of you who like physical DVDs, we offer unlimited free shipping on all items, anywhere in the world, anytime. You'll also get access to the entire iChess.club library, where we post over a dozen exclusive new videos every month. Our lineup of presenters is of much higher quality than anything you can find on YouTube, with exclusive videos by Simon Williams, Damian Lemos, Valerie Lilov, Brian Smith, Eric Rosen you can't find anywhere else, and even private appearances by world's top grandmasters such as Anatoly Karpov, Judith Polgar, Susan Polgar, and more. There are dozens of other benefits as well, such as an additional 5% off all items already on sale, a free 30-minute preview of every single product in our shop, and the ability to purchase items at the sale price up to 30 days after the sale has ended. There are so many benefits we can't possibly list them all in this video. So, join the iChess Club community today and start saving. Joining is easy and you can cancel at any time. So, what are you waiting for? Sign up today.
Alright, so the first line we're going to look at is a very important and underrated line in my opinion. It's a line that you are going to get fairly often. And that's after playing bishop b5 check in the Moscow Sicilian, move knight c6. Now, this is the third most played move in this position. The move bishop d7 has been the main line by far for many, many years, blocking the check in a very natural way. But the move knight to d7 has really come about, I would say, over the past 10-15 years as a serious way for black to attempt to play for a win against the Moscow Sicilian. Black blocks the check in a very unnatural way in order to potentially obtain the bishop pair, and it's a very unbalanced way to play, very ambitious way to play against bishop b5. However, the next most natural way to play against this is to play the move knight c6. Now, of course, I want to point out very simply that we can get, after 2 knight c6, bishop b5, d6 can come about as a transposition. So the lines with this particular position will be dealt with here and not in the section on the Rosalima. Knight c6, what's this move all about? Well, you're blocking the check. You're bringing the knight out to its most natural square. It's got to be a completely fine move. And now as white, I suggest just castling. Perhaps opening up some options for going d4. If black doesn't hurry up and defend against the threats and play the move bishop to d7, which is the main move, by some distance, and the move you're going to get almost all of the time. And we're going to be looking at a game first off between Emil Sutovsky and Grebionkin from 2003, featuring a sideline which is you're going to get, a fair amount of the time. And knowing some of the tactical motifs that Emil presents in this game, I think is really essential. So after bishop d7, we should almost always play the move rook e1 here. Not g5, although that is a move we, ironically, we'll see in other lines. And in this position here, black tends to play two main moves. So this is the main kind of spot of rook e1. And you can see there the arrows on the board I've highlighted, because the move rook e1 not only brings the rook into the game, protects the e4 pawn, but it vacates the f1 square for this bishop. Now, that might not look like much, but in a lot of positions, especially after the main line, which is going to be discussed in some other games, which goes knight f6, white now plays c3, aiming at building his perfect central duo. And after a6, the move bishop to f1, just bringing the bishop back to safety on f1, has been the main move for many years, and it's a move we're going to be analysing in this series. Nevertheless, after rook e1, black can alter the move order here and play the move a6 first, which looks like a perfectly natural move. You're putting the question to the bishop. And now, of course, white can play the move bishop to f1 here. This has been played before, but it's not as good in this particular position, because here black can actually play the move bishop g4. And getting in c3, d4 here is not as easy. So after a6 immediately, and that's a6 before knight f6, in this position here, rook e1, a6, I actually recommend that we play a la Sutovsky and take on c6 immediately. Black takes back with the bishop, and now we open up the center. So we've given up the two bishops here as white, fine. Now what do we have in return? We're going to open up the center and utilize the central concentration of our pieces to actually pose black some serious problems. Black takes on d4, as in every Sicilian. And now I recommend you take back on d4, like Sutovsky did with the queen. Taking back on d4 with the knight is perfectly fine and perfectly reasonable. In fact, it's been played by a bunch of top players. But Sutovsky and Chris Ward even have tended to take back, Gawain Jones against Chris Ward, I should say, have tended to take back on d4 with the queen. I think this is a more aggressive option. It's an option I like. Now, that's not to say if black knows what he's doing that he can't get a perfectly fine position, but I think practically speaking, dealing with this move over the board is quite difficult. So when you take back with the queen on d4, you do so because that queen can't really be bothered apart from one way, which is for black to play the move pawn to e5. But as soon as he does that, let's just say, for example, he did it in this position here, white will drop his queen back to d3, and what black has done is he's given himself a backwards pawn here on d6, which can be attacked along the d file in many ways, and white can just simply occupy this d5 square in a very kind of well-known way in the Sicilian. So this is more of like a Sveshnikov structure, but black has to be really careful that white just doesn't build up a lot of pressure against the d6 pawn and put one of his knights on d5. We're going to have a look at some other lines. So after queen takes d4, what black tends to do, and what Grebionkin did, is play the move knight f6. And now I recommend white simply play the move knight to c3. We did actually see Gawain Jones against Chris Ward play the move bishop to g5, e6, and now knight bd2. Very interesting setup, looking at putting the knight on a more dynamic square, such as the c4 square, but as it turns out, I don't think this is that good, and I prefer just playing the much more simple, much more natural move knight to c3. And already in this position, and the reason why I'm proposing this, so many tactics are going to be available shortly. Black has to be very, very precise to maintain the balance. So, as an example, what if black plays the move g6, like you would if you were a dragon player, or you like fianchettoing your bishops? Well, here white has now got a very, very serious idea, e5. Remember how I spoke about having the central concentration of pieces. It's really important that we utilize the positioning of our pieces when we can, especially when our opponent's king is still stuck in the center. So the move e5 is extremely dangerous for black. Black has to take. If he takes on f3, he loses to e takes f6. opening the e-file, pieces are equal, f takes e7 and queen takes h8. Next is coming, so you can't even consider that. You have to take on e5, and now white can simply take back on e5. Suddenly, white has got an unusual kind of threat. Queen takes f6, simply winning a piece because of the pin. Same idea with bishop takes f3. You just go queen takes f6 here, and it showers already for black. He can resign, losing a whole piece. So you have to go bishop g7 here, and this is where white has got an absolute humdinger of a tactic, and one that you guys are going to remember in this particular variation. The move bishop to h6. Wowee. Amazing move. The idea, of course, is that if bishop takes h6, not only can you play queen takes f6 in this position, but here maybe black can survive with the move castles. But you've actually got the stunning idea rook a to d1 first. And the reason why this is a stunning idea is because now you are actually kicking this queen away from d8, and there's a mating threat on e7, so queen c8 just runs into mate. And it's basically curtains here. If you go bishop d7, well, now white can take on f6, and after castles, there's this nasty pin here, so white can just play a move like rook takes e7, for example, and black is just going to lose this d7 bishop very, very easily. Bishop to g7, you can probably just come back to h4, and I don't see how black survives. So rook a d1 actually is just the end of the game. Maybe black's best move here is just to castle and give up the queen, but a queen for two pieces really shouldn't be enough, and white should have an advantage. So the only move for black to stay on the board here is actually to play the move castles immediately, after which, and this is the game Karyev against Sevdimilayev from 2016, white takes on g7. And now it's very important to play the move knight to d4. You don't want to take on e7 here and allow your crippling of your kingside pawns with bishop takes f3. So you want to play the move knight to d4, keeping that knight, hitting that bishop, and now you're threatening to take on c6 and then take on e7. Black has to go rook e8, and after rook a d1, we conclude this variation with a very clear evaluation of white is better. You've got a beautifully centralized queen on e5, your knight hitting that bishop on c6. Black's king is awkwardly placed. You've got your rooks perfectly centralized. I think it's clear that white is a little bit better here. So g6 already in this position is, in my opinion, a bit of a mistake. The move e5 is the next move we have to consider, apart from the move e6, which is the stem game, Sutovsky versus Gray. So what happens after e5? Well, we drop our queen back to d3, and now black has got a very important move to play. And that is the move pawn to h6. The reason why this is important is because black has to stop white playing bishop g5. So for example, if black plays bishop to e7 here, white plays the move bishop to g5, and gets his ideal setup, because now after h6, white is absolutely happy to exchange this bishop for the knight, and this is a motif that you guys really have to remember. And after bishop takes f6, to bring this rook into d1, hitting this d6 pawn, the bishop might have to go back to e7, and now white has got a whole bunch of ideas. But white, for example, could immediately play the move knight d5, threatening to get rid of this bishop and win the pawn. And if bishop takes d5, queen takes d5, we reach a very well-known position where white has got, in many aspects, a clear positional advantage. The black bishop is extremely passive against this white knight, and this white knight is going to find its way either to the d5 square, the f5 square, the c4 square. Black has got all of these targets, whereas white is completely safe. If the rook ever goes to c8, you put your pawn on c3, and it's simply a position that is one of the most inferior kind of Sveshnikov positions that you could get with black. So black absolutely has to play the move h6 to avoid this exchange of bishop for knight, and now I suggest the move knight to d2. Very well-known move in these positions. It looks odd blocking in your bishop, but the idea is to reroute the knight via the c4 square. So black will most likely play the move pawn to b5, as per the game Guyot versus Kolas or Shiam versus Jumaev. And now I'm going to suggest a very important novelty. In both of those games, white played the very meek a3. We're not going to be meek. We are going to meet things with energy and play the move pawn to a4 in this position. Very important move. The reason behind that is you want to force black's hand. So when he plays the move b4, you can now play the move knight into d5. And the c4 square has become available. So let's say black takes on d5 with the bishop. You take back with the pawn, bishop to e7, and now another very important subtle positional move here for white, the move a5. We've seen this and learned this idea from actually positions in the anti-martial Spanish, where white now fixes these pawns and disjoints these pawns. So black can now not, bring these pawns together, meaning they're two permanent weaknesses. And on top of that, we've now fixed a square here on b6 as well, potentially for our knight to jump into after it goes to c4. So, for example, knight to d7, knight to c4, castles, and bishop to e3. Black can try and gain some space on the king side with f5, but after f3, I think it's absolutely clear that white has got a fantastic position here. Black is going to be tied down to the defense of these two weak pawns for a very long time. If black ever commits with f4, we can just slide back to the f2 square. Now he gives up another important square on e4. Meanwhile, this bishop here on e7 is really struggling to get into the game. So I think this move a4 in this position, a serious theoretical novelty, and one that we'll see a bit more. So e5, nothing to worry about. As per the game, Sutovsky wrote Grebionkin, and the move you're going to get for the lion's share if they play a6 in this variation very early is the move 9 pawn to e6. Well, we continue as normal. As normal, and what I mean by as normal is by playing the move knight to d5. You can play bishop g5 here, of course, that's a very well-known idea, and after bishop e7, rook a to d1. But if you compare this to the lines with e5, black simply doesn't have the kind of weaknesses. And the problem with white here is that if you take on f6, let's say black castles, and you take on f6 here, looks as though things are great, because you say, well, he has to go g takes f6 and we cripple his king side. No. In this position here, black can just play the move bishop takes f6, and this is a move that is often completely underestimated here. And after queen takes d6, black can either take on d6 first, or take on c3, whatever he wants, or play the move queen a5. But the point is that these positions here, just because white has won a pawn, look at the pawn he has actually got here. I mean, these pawns are just disgusting, sitting on the open c file. And actually, these positions are completely fine for black. For example, as played by Grandmaster Yevgeny Vorobyov in 2004, this position here is just absolutely fine for black. The extra pawn is worthless. So you can play bishop g5, but it doesn't actually bring much. It's not critical. But the move knight d5 is going to really send the shivers up your opponent's spine. And Sutovsky is the kind of guy we want to watch when this kind of typical Sicilian motif takes place. So what is knight d5 all about? Well, obviously it's a piece sacrifice. I guess the first thing we have to try and understand is what happens after e takes d5. Well, e takes d5 is just not very good, because after e takes d5 check, we win not only the pawn back, but we open up with check. So after bishop e7, we can take on c6, b takes c6. And here white has got a whole bunch of moves, but if you really wanted to in this position, you could play bishop g5, you could stop the black from castling with a move like queen to e3. There are many different ideas here. For example, you could even play the move queen to a4 here, just targeting this weak c6 pawn, and then after queen d7, maybe play knight d4, and after rook c8, you can go bishop g5, and after castles, well, you can even just nab a pawn here on a6, and this isn't necessarily the only way to go in this position. So, e takes d5 simply it isn't good enough for equality. White will just get a commanding position. The same goes actually if black decides to take on d5 with the knight. Knight takes d5. Well, now we take back on d5, and lo and behold, we've once again got this fantastic pin after knight d5, e5. Black is already in deep trouble. Bishop takes d5. We just win it because of the pin. So the bishop will probably have to go back to d7. And now we can just play... We can play a bunch of moves here, actually. It's not clear even what is the best. Many moves win. For example, taking on e6 and playing bishop g5 looks devastating because you can't go bishop e7 on account of queen takes g7. Black's position falls apart. Bishop f4 immediately is a very strong move as well, because black would love to go e5, doesn't need a brain surgeon to realize that we're not just going to let that move stand. We can just take on e5 and take back, and then go d6, winning our piece back. We can even take on g7 first, and then go d6, winning our piece back. Just every line wins. As long as you open up lines to that king, these kind of defenses are, for the most part, not going to work. So, after knight d5, Grebionkin played a move which is probably the second best move in this position. And that's the move bishop takes d5. Maybe it's the third best move. Again, this move doesn't really work out. The critical moves in this position are firstly the move bishop to e7. Now, it's very difficult for a black player to play this move because you allow white to simply take on e7 with the knight, and after queen takes e7, once again to play this move e5. And you can't take on f3. That would be a mistake on account of this Zug e takes f6, winning a piece. You have to take back on e5, and now knight takes e5. And this was seen in the game John Shaw against Beliavsky in 2008. And basically, white is playing completely risk-free in this position. He's got ideas of developing the bishop out to g5 and playing rook a d1, very nice and centralized. Or you could even think about playing with b3, put the bishop onto b2 and play with c4. And you've got this lovely pressure along the long diagonal against black's king. Whereas black, his bishop is clearly inferior. Having the queenside majority versus the kingside majority gives white additional flexibility. And even though the game Shaw-Beliavsky actually ended in a draw, I think white has got a very, very clear, small advantage in this position. So bishop e7 is a really tough pill for black to swallow. So what else can he do? Well, actually, in this position, as it turns out, the move e5 might be best. And the difference between doing this here is that compared to the lines where he goes e5 straight away, black can actually close the d file at once. So, for example, after queen to d3, black can take on d5 and go bishop e7. So we wouldn't commit to a knight d5 so early against an earlier e5. This position is around balance. This is perfectly playable for white and black. You can go bishop g5 here, castles, play the move c4. Very, very standard position here. If black ever goes e4, this looks like it wins a piece, but he has to be careful of the move queen e2. And if he takes on f3 to take on e7, and actually this kind of variation works out for white. If you wanted to avoid all of this, of course, you could take on e6 first and after take c4. But I feel as though this position has a bit less bite. So as it turns out, after e5, if you really want to be aggressive here, you can play the spectacular move knight takes e5. And this is actually the move that has been suggested as the best way for white. The point is that after d takes e5, what else? You have to play this move. Queen takes e5 check. The king can move, but it's a bad move. You have to go bishop e7. So, for example, if king d7 here, white just plays the move queen to f5 check. The king goes back to e8, and now bishop g5. And now black has lost castling rights. White is a piece down, yes, but the position is absolutely horrific for black. For example, if he plays the move bishop e7 here, we can just take on e7, and after queen takes e7, go e5, and that's curtains for black. We're just going e takes f6 next. Black cannot move his king, get it castled, because he's already moved it. So, I mean, you know, and also I should point out that if black plays the move bishop takes d5, puke, opening the e-file, e takes d5, bishop e7, now we can take on f6, and now we can take here like so. Once again, black is in huge trouble, d6 is threatened, queen takes h8 is threatened, and the position is close to losing. So black, for the most part, after queen takes e5, will play the move bishop e7 immediately. This is the most natural move. And now with white, we can't just swap down because we've sacrificed a piece, but we can go knight c7 check, king f8, and take the rook in the corner. And after queen takes a8, we reach a very, very interesting unbalanced position where white has won 2 pawns and a rook for 2 pieces, which traditionally is around equal in material terms. But in this particular position, given that black still has got major problems getting his king safe and getting his pieces out, for example, if white just plays the move bishop d2 here, brings a rook to the d file, I would take white here. I'm not saying that it's clear-cut or anything like that, but I just think that white's coordination is that much better, and this is a good way to play for a win. So e5 or bishop e7 are the best moves, but the move bishop takes d5, as played by Grebionkin, is probably not quite working out for black, because now after e takes d5 and now e5, it won't take too many guesses after seeing the previous variations what white should do. Yes, indeed, the move knight takes e5. And this move is crushing, because after d takes e5, queen takes e5 check, and now bishop to e7, white can just play the move d6, and after queen takes d6, we just take it because of the pin. We win our piece back with additional material. If black now moves his king to d7, we now play the move bishop f4, setting up a nasty mate in one threat with queen f5. And if black plays, for example, a move like g6, stopping queen f5 check, white can now play the move pawn to d6. And as it turns out, black is completely handcuffed here. There's nothing that he can do. For example, if he plays the move bishop to g7, white has got a whole bunch of moves that win. Everything wins. But I would recommend playing a move like probably queen to d4, threatening the move rook e7 check. And if rook e8, we can now just go rook e7 check anyway. Absolutely stunning stuff. The point is, after rook takes e7, d takes e7, discovered check, king takes e7, we can now throw this check in, and the king never gets safe. For example, if king e8, we throw rook e1 check in, and if the king goes to d7, now we take on b7, and it's mate on the very next move. Absolutely glorious stuff. And so this position here basically is curtains for black. Rook e7 check is coming. There's absolutely nothing that black can do. He can try the move knight h5, but once again we can just fling this queen either to d5, that's good enough, or to b4, threatening queen takes b7, threatening rook e7, and there's absolutely nothing that black can do. The dual threats are too much. Knight takes f4, queen takes b7 check, king takes d6, rook a d1 check is one very pretty variation. King to c5, b4 check, the king running up the board just like we like it. King to c4, queen c6 check, we give a check on b1, after king a5 check, and mate finally. Obviously with the king running up the board, there should be checkmate there. So basically, after knight takes e5, you can't take back on e5. It just doesn't work. You're just getting checkmated. So you have to go bishop e7, but this is obviously very sad to give up a pawn and a central pawn as easy as that. And now, many ways to play here. The move knight g4 is absolutely clear cut, because after the move castles here, you can just play the move knight to e3 and put the knight on f5 next. White to pawn up easily. But Sutovsky also played perfectly fine. He played knight to f3, castles, bishop to g5, consolidating his pawn advantage. h6, bishop f4, rook c8, c4, knight d7, rook a c1. Playing very natural moves, bishop f6, queen d2, queen b6, b3. So far, so good. a5, bishop to e3, queen to b4. Good try by Grebionkin to try and open some files. But after bishop f4, oops, the d6 pawn now falls. Knight c5. Take that off. Thank you very much. Take that off. 2 pawns exchange up. It's going to be a very easy conversion for somebody of Swiatkowski's level. So, all in all, the line involving after rook e1, the main move is knight f6, but if they play an early a6, as per this game, I recommend just taking on c6, playing d4, getting that queen active, and you will pose your opponent's serious problems. I think this is a really, really beautiful way for white to play.